Hi, this is Tanner Rainbolt. This is a good teacher turns bad case study. Just a summary, quick overview. This problem is occurring at Crestview Elementary. Mrs. Wilson is the principal, and we're kind of acting as her in this situation. Mrs. Horton is a former teacher of the year. She's had a troubled home life. Recently, there's been many complaints from upset parents to not only Mrs. Wilson, the principal, but the superintendent as well. And the real problem comes with a conference with the parent. The parent feels like she wasn't prepared for the conference, that she's wasting his time. She snaps at him and yells at him, and then Mrs. Wilson has to interject and basically end the meeting. Category 1, problem and analysis. So 3 things that I know. Mrs. Horton is struggling. She's having a rough home life. She's kind of translating that into the classroom where she's struggling to be an effective teacher. There are many different complaints about Mrs. Horton. She's arguing with colleagues. She didn't hold a parent-teacher conference. And then the superintendent has called that there's 4 parents who want their students removed from her class. And that she doesn't support our new reading piloted program. So those are three things that I know. 3 things that I need to know more about is kind of what Mrs. Horton's struggling with, what I can do to help her. The previous policy on student removal, is this something that occurs often? Is this something that, something that we can do, kind of what's previously been done. And the third one is possible staff discipline policy. If she doesn't, make strides to get better, what are the next steps? Again, the problem is Mrs. Horton's unprofessional behavior. She's yelling at the students and parents. She's showing up late to work, arguing with colleagues, like I said, and she's not on board with the reading pilot program, and she's made that apparent. Category 2, plan of action and implementation. So I need to talk to the following people, kind of just record evidence. One, Mrs. Horton, which we talked about, seeing her side of the story and seeing what she needs from myself. Number 2 is the upset parents. Again, I'll talk about this later, but trying to rebuild that relationship. Same with the students, just trying to get their feedback on what Mrs. Horton is doing on a daily basis. And then just talking to the superintendent and the HR, director, and seeing what the next steps are if Mrs. Horton doesn't make an improvement. Category 2, implementation. Continued. 3 things. 1, meeting with Mrs. Horton and admin, which I just explained, kind of laying down the expectations from here. Number 2, meeting with the upset parents, trying to resolve this issue. Again, I want them to make sure that, from my end, that I'm doing everything to make sure that their student is successful in the class. And number 3, getting Mrs. Horton help. This might be personal, outside conference, a counselor, or professional, like maybe she attends certain seminars on classroom management or conflict resolution or things in that nature. Resolving the issue. Number 1, I want to build that relationship back up with Mrs. Horton, show her that she can trust me, that I can trust her again, kind of lay down the expectations, and then, she needs to be held accountable if things don't change. Number 2, rebuild student and parent relationships. This is key. Just talking to the students, trying to get them to feel safe in the classroom again, and valued, and then parents seeing what we can do to fix this situation. Just again, reiterating that, the student interest is what the number 1 priority is at this school. And number 3, document and record everything, especially the problem that is going on. Just so that if there are changes that need to be made, there's evidence to back up those changes. Category 4, the debrief. Thinking 3 things. Number 1, how can I help Mrs. Horton become a better teacher, more successful? Number 2, how should I handle this difficult situation? Because it is tough. There's a lot of different cards in this. There's Mrs. Horton's side, there's the parents, the students, and then the superintendent's involved. So it's just kind of a sticky situation. And number 3, how can we prevent this from happening again, whether it be with Mrs. Horton or with any other staff members? Just making sure that, I'll talk about it later, just going through the professional development on what is expected at our school. And 3 things I'm feeling. 1, I'm concerned about the situation, just because it is difficult. Mrs. Horton was the former teacher of the year. She has the tools and resources to be great, but she's just not doing that right now. So I'm concerned about that. Number two is understanding. I obviously understand from the parents' side why they should be frustrated. Mrs. Horton isn't being professional and she isn't, putting the students first. So I understand their side on that. And number three is just being embarrassed because this does fall back on the principal. They are running the school. They are in charge of staff and students and all of that. So that's the third thing I was feeling. Three things I value. I value the staff because it is a tough job. As a teacher, there are ups and downs of every day, but you still need to handle everything professionally. Number two, the students, that's what everybody's here for. It's just making sure that students are having a positive learning environment and valuing that. And three, value the parent support. I think that's huge. If you get parent buy-in, it's going to make things a heck of a lot easier in your school. Three, unresolved issues. Number one, will Mrs. Horton change? Like I said, she has the resources and tools to be a great teacher, but she needs to be more professional. Number two, what does her future look like here? If she doesn't take these steps to get better, then obviously a change needs to be made. And number three, can all relationships be rebuilt? This is key on my end, is making sure that, students and parents are upset and how we can, rebuild that relationship to make sure that, this school is running smoothly and that, everybody feels valued and has a say in student learning. Category 5, reflection, promoting academic success. One, just getting Mrs. Horton the tools and resources that she needs to be a better teacher, whether that be classroom management techniques or maybe she attends some professional seminar, just to make sure that she is back on track of where she needs to be. Number two, the pilot reading program. Just briefly, going over that, just making sure that, everybody is getting better on a daily basis when it comes to reading. And number three, the continuity with all stakeholders. I think if you get, buy-in from staff and students and parents and superintendent and things like that, it's going to make your school a better place with more support. Promote personal well-being. Three things here. Number one, rebuild relationships with students and parents. That's key. It's going to make the positive learning environment so much better. Number two, staff walkthroughs as a principal, walking through classrooms, especially for instance, Mrs. Horton's class, making sure that you're aware of what's going on in each classroom so that if there is an issue, you're aware of it. And number three, just getting outside help, whether that maybe bring somebody in to talk to Mrs. Horton or any of the staff members on just how to handle difficult situations. And the last one, improving instruction, provide meaningful professional development. I think we've learned about, tying things to evaluations. So I talked about documenting evidence and things in that nature, is just making sure that teachers are aware of what's to be expected when it comes to instruction. And number two, classroom management and conflict resolution training. I talked about that, bringing in outside people just to talk about different strategies and techniques, how to handle difficult conversations, difficult situations, going through different, scenarios on a conflict and how you handle that in a professional manner. And number three, the mentor teacher program. We have that currently at our school. Just having somebody there to bounce ideas off of and get advice from somebody. So maybe it's a teacher who's taught in the building for a long time and they're mentoring, another teacher. I think it's great to have, again, somebody just to who's maybe experienced things and just bounce things off of. So that is my case study. I really enjoyed this class. Thank you.